From around 900 AD to the late medieval period, millions of European peasants discovered something that modern science has only recently confirmed. The frozen surface world was killing them, but 3 feet underground, the Earth itself held steady at 50 degrees year-round. While historians focused on kings and castles, archaeologists have been uncovering elaborate networks of underground shelters that kept entire families alive through brutal winters, Viking raids, and fires that consumed whole villages. These weren't desperate holes dug by frightened people. They were engineered survival systems passed down through generations, and the stories of the families who lived in them have been buried for centuries. Hey, if these help you drift off, subscribe if you feel like it, and I always like knowing where everyone's listening from. Drop your city and the time. It's kind of nice seeing all the different places. Alright, so we're heading back to medieval Europe, somewhere around the early 1300s. But before we go anywhere, get yourself comfortable. I mean it. Fix those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Trust me on this one. Your eyes open to darkness, not the soft darkness of your bedroom right now, with its familiar shadows and the gentle glow of whatever light source you've got going. This darkness is complete, the kind that presses against your face like a damp cloth, and the cold has already found you. Your name is Agnes, you're 12 years old, and you just woke up in a medieval peasant house somewhere in Bavaria during one of the worst winters anyone can remember. The straw beneath you crinkles as you shift, trying to pull the rough wool blanket tighter around your shoulders. It doesn't help much. The blanket's been worn thin from years of use, passed down from your grandmother who died before you could remember her face. Every breath you take comes out as a small cloud of vapour, barely visible in the darkness, but you can feel it cooling against your lips. The fire went out sometime in the night. Of course it did. Your father wolf will be angry about that. Not at you, but at himself. He'd stayed up late trying to keep it going, feeding it the last of the dried wood piece by piece. But exhaustion won. It always wins eventually. And now the single room you share with your family feels less like a home and more like the inside of an ice house. The walls around you are made of wattle and daub. That sounds fancy if you don't know what it means. It's basically sticks woven together and covered with a mixture of mud, straw, and probably some animal dung. Your house is held together by dirt and wishful thinking, and right now the wind is whistling through gaps in those walls like an unwelcome house guest that refuses to leave. You can hear your little brother Oswin breathing somewhere in the darkness. He's 7, and he's managed to burrow so deep into the straw pile that he's probably the warmest person in the house. Smart kid. Annoying, but smart. Your mother Edith is already awake. You can tell because you hear the soft scraping sound of her trying to coax the embers back to life. She's been doing this since before dawn, probably. The woman barely sleeps anymore. There's too much to worry about. Agnes, her voice cuts through the darkness. Come help me with the fire. You don't want to leave your blanket. Every fibre of your being is screaming at you to stay exactly where you are, curled into this tiny ball of barely there warmth. But you push yourself up anyway because that's what you do. That's what everyone does. You survive or you don't. There's not much in between. The floor is frozen earth beneath your feet. Literally frozen. You can feel the hard ridges where the mud has cracked and solidified. Your shoes are somewhere nearby, rough leather things that your father patched together from scraps, and you fumble around until your fingers close around them. The fire catches just as you reach your mother's side. A small flame. Pathetic, really, but it's enough to cast flickering shadows across her face. She looks tired. She always looks tired, but there's something else in her expression this morning. Something you haven't seen before. Your father wants to show you something today, she says, keeping her voice low so she doesn't wake Oswin. Something important. What is it? She doesn't answer, just gestures toward the door with her chin, where grey morning light is starting to seep through the cracks in the wooden frame. Your father is standing outside when you emerge, wrapped in layers of wool and a thick cloak made from sheep's hide. The cold hits you like a physical force the moment you step through the doorway. It's the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache and your eyes water, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there. The village is quiet. Too quiet, actually. Usually by this hour there's some activity. Farmers heading to check on livestock, women carrying water from the well, children running errands. But today the paths between the houses are empty except for the snow that fell during the night. Fresh powder covering everything in a deceptive blanket of white that makes the world look peaceful. It's not peaceful. Nothing about this world is peaceful. Come, your father says. Just that one word. He turns and starts walking toward the edge of the village, toward the low hills that rise beyond the last cluster of houses. You follow him because that's what you do. You don't ask questions. Not yet, anyway. The snow crunches beneath your feet as you walk. It's the only sound in the entire landscape, that rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch that marks each step. Your father moves with purpose, like he knows exactly where he's going, which he does. He's been walking this path for 20 years, longer probably, since before you were born, when you reach the hillside. He stops. You look around, confused. There's nothing here. Just a gentle slope covered in snow, some bare trees in the distance, and a pile of stones that might have been a wall once but has long since crumbled into a scattered heap. Look carefully, your father says. You look. You see snow, stones, dead grass poking through the white in patches. Nothing special. I don't see anything. He almost smiles. Almost. Your father isn't much for smiling these days, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes. Pride, maybe, or anticipation. He walks to the pile of stones and kneels down. His bare hands, cracked and weathered from years of work, brush away snow from what looks like just another rock. But it's not. As he clears more snow away, you see that it's actually a wooden cover, cleverly disguised to look like part of the natural landscape. He lifts it. Beneath is a hole, not just any hole. Steps, carved into the earth itself, descending into darkness. This is our earth house, your father says. Your grandfather built it. His father before him. And today, you learn what it really is. He goes first, disappearing into the ground like the earth is swallowing him. You hesitate at the entrance, staring down into the blackness. Every instinct tells you this is wrong, that humans don't belong underground, that you should stay in the light, stay in the cold, stay where you can at least see what's trying to kill you. But then something remarkable happens. Warm air rises from the opening. Not hot, but warm. Noticeably, undeniably warmer than the frozen world above. You descend. The steps are narrow and uneven, carved into packed earth that's been reinforced with wooden planks in some places. You have to duck your head as the passage angles downward, one hand trailing along the wall for balance. The wall is smooth, worn down by countless hands touching it over the years. The darkness should be total, but it's not. As you go deeper, you notice a faint glow ahead. Your father has lit something, a small oil lamp maybe, tucked into a niche in the wall, and then the passage opens up. You stop. You can't help it. You just stop and stare. It's a room. an actual room carved out of the earth itself. The ceiling is low, maybe 6 feet at the highest point, held up by thick wooden beams that your grandfather must have placed decades ago. The walls are packed earth, but they've been smoothed and in some places painted with simple red and brown pigments. There are shapes on the walls, a cross, what might be a tree, small handprints pressed into the clay, preserved forever, and it's warm. Not warm like a summer day, but warm like being inside, out of the wind, away from the killing cold. The temperature down here must be close to 50 degrees, you'll learn later. Not comfortable by modern standards, but compared to the frozen hell above ground, this feels like paradise. How? You manage to ask. Your father sets the lamp on a carved shelf in the wall. The light dances across his face as he turns to look at you. The earth remembers warmth, he says. 3 feet down, the ground holds steady. Summer and winter, it doesn't change. While the surface freezes solid, down here stays the same. Your grandfather figured it out watching his cellar. The vegetables never froze, so he dug deeper and deeper until he had this. You look around the room with new eyes. There's a raised platform along one wall, covered with straw and furs clearly meant for sleeping. Niches carved into the walls hold pottery and wooden containers. In one corner you can see where a tunnel leads off into more darkness. There's more. 3 chambers, your father says. This one for living, another for storing food, and a passage that connects to Eric's farm in case we need to escape without being seen. Eric, your neighbour. You suddenly remember that he's never mentioned having an underground house of his own. But of course he wouldn't mention it. Nobody mentions these things. That's the whole point. Your father walks to one of the walls and runs his hand along it. Feel this. You step forward and press your palm against the packed earth. It's not cold like you expected. It's cool, yes, but not cold. And there's something else. The texture is different in this spot, rougher. Clay mixed with straw, your father explains. Like building a wall above ground, but stronger. The straw keeps it from cracking. The clay keeps the moisture out. Took my father 3 winters to get it right. Kept collapsing at first. He moves to the corner where the tunnel disappears. That passage angles downward for the first 10 feet. You know why? You shake your head. Cold air sinks. Warm air rises. By angling the entrance down, then up into this chamber, the cold air never reaches us. It settles at the lowest point of the tunnel and stays there. The warm air we create stays up here. He taps his temple. Your grandfather couldn't read a single word, but he understood something that the builders of great cathedrals probably never thought about. Something moves in the darkness of the tunnel. You tense, your hand instinctively reaching for anything you could use as a weapon. But it's just a rat scurrying along the wall before disappearing into a crack. Your father doesn't even flinch. Rats we can handle. It's the other things we built this for. What other things? He looks at you, really looks at you, in that way he has when he's about to say something he's been holding back. Men, he says simply. Men are what we hide from. The word hangs in the air between you. You've heard stories, of course. Everyone has heard stories. Raids on villages farther north. Armies passing through and taking whatever they wanted. Bandits who prey on isolated farms. But your village has been lucky, so far. Last winter, your father continues, word came that a band of armed men was moving through the forest. 20 of them, maybe more, coming this way. You didn't know this. Nobody told you this. The whole village came down here. 43 people in 3 connected earth houses for 11 days. We heard them pass by overhead on the second day. Horses, wagons. They found the village empty and took what they could carry. The grain from the storehouse, most of the chickens, your mother's best cooking pot. He says that last part with something that might be dark humour. His wife's cooking pot, among the casualties of survival. But they didn't find us. They couldn't, because we weren't there. We were here. You look around the chamber again. 43 people, 11 days. In spaces like this, carved out of the raw earth by people who weren't architects or engineers, just farmers, just families, just people who wanted to live. Your father reaches up and takes something from one of the shelves, a piece of charcoal burnt down to almost nothing. See these marks on the wall? These lines? You look where he's pointing. Near the sleeping platform there's a series of scratches in the clay, short vertical lines grouped in sets of 5, 4 standing, 1 crossed through them. 11 days, your father says. Someone marked each one. I don't remember who. We were all just waiting and trying not to make any sound that might carry to the surface. The children were the hardest to keep quiet. Oswin wasn't born yet, but there were other little ones. He puts the charcoal back on the shelf. That's why you're here today, Agnes. Because someday you'll need to know this place exists. You'll need to know how to find it, how to survive in it, how to keep it working. The entrance is hidden for a reason. The tunnels connect for a reason. Everything down here is here for a reason. And now it's time for you to learn all of it. Above your head, somewhere in the world of light and ice and danger, a bell begins to ring. You both freeze. That's the village bell. It only rings for 2 reasons: fire or trouble approaching. Your father's face changes. The teaching moment is over. He's already moving toward the steps, toward the entrance, toward whatever's waiting above. Stay here, he says over his shoulder. If I don't come back in 1 hour, take your brother and your mother and come down. Use the tunnel to Eric's, he'll know what to do. And then he's gone, climbing up into the grey winter light, leaving you alone in the earth house that your grandfather built. You count your heartbeats in the silence. The lamp flickers. Somewhere above you hear shouting. 112, 113, 114. You're still counting when the shouting gets louder. Not the kind of shouting that comes from an argument between neighbours about whose pig got into whose garden. This is different. This is the kind of shouting that comes from throats that are already hoarse with fear. The lamp flame dances against the earthen walls, casting shadows that move like living things. You press yourself against the sleeping platform, fingers digging into the straw, and you wait. How long has it been? 5 minutes? 10? Your father said 1 hour. 1 hour before you're supposed to get your mother and Oswin and bring them down here. But you don't have any way to measure time. There's no church bell marking the hours down here, no sun moving across the sky, just darkness and the small circle of light from that single lamp and the sound of your own breathing. Footsteps, heavy, fast, coming down the passage. Your heart slams against your ribs so hard you're surprised it doesn't crack them. You look around for something, anything, you could use as a weapon. There's a wooden ladle in one of the wall niches. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. The footsteps get closer, and then your mother's face appears in the lamplight, and behind her, your father carrying Oswin in his arms. The little boy is still half asleep, confused, rubbing his eyes with his fists. Move, your father says. Just that one word, but the way he says it makes you scramble backward instantly. More footsteps behind them. More people coming down the passage. Old Gerda from 3 houses over, moving faster than you've ever seen her move, her grey hair wild around her face. Behind her, the blacksmith's son Henrik and his pregnant wife Marta. Then the widow Brunhild with her 4 children ranging from nearly grown to barely walking, the littlest one crying and Brunhild trying to shush him as she stumbles down the uneven steps. Keep them quiet, your father says, but he's not looking at anyone in particular. He's looking back up the passage toward the entrance. For the love of God, keep the children quiet. Your mother takes Oswin from his arms and pulls you close. You can feel her trembling, not from the cold. Your mother never trembles from the cold. She's trembled through 35 winters and never let the temperature break her. But she's trembling now. What's happening, you whisper. She doesn't answer, just shakes her head and holds you tighter. More people keep coming. The chamber that seemed spacious when it was just you and your father is filling up fast. Bodies pressing against bodies, the smell of unwashed wool and fear sweat and someone's garlic breath close enough to make your eyes water. You can hear other sounds now too, coming from somewhere beyond this chamber. People moving into the connected spaces. Eric's earth house must be filling up as well. Your father is the last one down. He pulls the entrance cover into place behind him, and you hear him wedging something against it. A beam, maybe. Something to hold it shut from the inside. How many? Gerda asks. Her voice is steady, which surprises you. The old woman has always seemed fragile, ready to blow away in a strong wind. But there's iron in her now. 20 at least, maybe 30. Hard to count. They came from the North Road. Armed? Swords, axes, some on horseback. Your father's voice drops lower. They have a wagon. A wagon. That means they're planning to take things. You're not sure why that makes it worse, but it does. They're not just passing through. They came here on purpose. They came here to steal. Did anyone see you come this way? That's Henrik, the blacksmith's son. His arm is wrapped protectively around Marta's shoulders. Her belly is huge, round as the moon. She must be close to her time. I don't think so. Most of them headed for the storehouse first. They'll be busy for a while. Somewhere above you, muffled by 3 feet of packed earth, you hear something crash. Heavy, like a door being kicked in, or a wall coming down. Oswin whimpers. Shh, shh, little one. Your mother's voice is barely a whisper. She rocks him against her chest like he's still a baby. We're playing the quiet game now. Remember the quiet game. Whoever makes the least noise wins. He looks up at her with wide eyes. He's 7, old enough to know something is very wrong, young enough that he can still be fooled into thinking it's a game. The widow Brunhild is having less luck with her youngest. The toddler is maybe 2 years old, and she doesn't understand games. She understands that it's dark and crowded and scary, and she wants to cry about it. Her older siblings are trying to help, making silly faces, offering her a carved wooden horse to play with, but nothing's working. Give her to me, Gerda says. Brunhild hesitates. I raised 6 of my own and buried 4. Give her to me. She takes the child and does something with her fingers, some rhythmic tapping pattern on the little girl's back that you've never seen before. Within 30 seconds, the crying stops. The toddler's eyes are still open, but she's calm now, thumb in her mouth, watching the lamp flame dance. My grandmother taught me that, Gerda says quietly. Works on goats too. Despite everything, despite the terror pressing down on all of you like a physical weight, Henrik lets out a small snort of laughter. He clamps his hand over his mouth immediately, horrified at himself, but it's too late. The sound escapes. Everyone freezes. You listen. Count to 10, 20, 30. Nothing happens. Whatever's going on up there, they didn't hear. 3 feet of earth between you and them is enough. At least for now. Time stretches in strange ways underground. Minutes feel like hours. You're pressed between your mother and the earthen wall, Oswin curled in your mother's lap, your father standing near the entrance passage with Henrik and two other men you recognise from the village. They're talking in voices so low you can't make out the words, just the rumble of sound. Marta sits on the sleeping platform, hands resting on her belly. Brunhild's children have formed a little cluster nearby, the older ones watching the younger ones, everyone's faces ghost pale in the lamplight. Gerda still holds the toddler, rocking her gently, and you sit there, pressed against the wall that your grandfather smoothed with his own hands, and you think about the people above you. Are they in your house right now, going through your things? There's not much to take. The cooking pot your mother loved is already gone from last time. There's some grain stored in a barrel near the hearth, some dried herbs hanging from the rafters, your father's tools. The only valuable thing in the whole house is a small silver cross that belonged to your grandmother, and your mother had the sense to grab that before they ran. You feel her hand touch it now, through the fabric of her dress where it hangs on a cord around her neck. A reflex, making sure it's still there. They'll take the livestock, someone whispers. You're not sure who. The voice sounds like it's coming from the storage chamber, carried through the narrow passage. Better the livestock than us. That's 3 years of breeding. The chickens, the pigs. Carl's got 2 cows. Carl's got his family alive. That's worth more than cows. The conversation dies. There's nothing more to say. You smell smoke. At first you think it's your imagination, the mind playing tricks in the darkness. But then you see your father's head snap up, and you know it's real. Smoke, filtering down through cracks in the earth above. Thin wisps of it curling into the chamber. They're burning something, Henrik says. The storehouse probably. If they can't take all the grain, they don't want us to have it either. What if they burn the whole village? Your father doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. Everyone in this chamber knows what happens if they burn the whole village. You'll survive down here, sure. The fire can't reach you through 3 feet of packed earth. But when you come up, there'll be nothing left. No houses, no barns, no food except what's stored in these underground chambers, and winter has barely begun. The smoke gets thicker, not enough to choke on, but enough that the air tastes different. Acrid. Wrong. Marta coughs, covers her mouth immediately, eyes wide with apology. Her husband moves closer, shielding her body with his own like that could somehow protect her from the smoke. There's air coming through the passage, your father says. The tunnel to Eric's. His entrance is on the other side of the hill. The smoke can't reach that far. Then we move that way. Slowly, quietly. Everyone follow me. The next few minutes are a blur of shuffling bodies and whispered directions. You keep one hand on your mother's dress, terrified of losing her in the darkness as you move through the narrow passage. The stone walls press in on both sides. You can feel the ceiling getting lower. At one point you have to duck, then crouch, then practically crawl for about 10 feet before the passage opens up again. Eric's chamber is smaller than yours. Somehow there are already people here. His wife Inga and their 3 children, plus the tanner's family and old Hans who lives alone at the edge of the village and smells like the goats he keeps. 43 people. That's how many your father said hid here last time. You look around at the faces trying to count. You lose track somewhere around 35. The lamplight doesn't reach everyone. The smoke won't follow us here, Eric says. He's a big man, bigger than your father, with hands like bear paws. The entrance slopes up before it goes down, like a chimney in reverse. Any smoke will rise and escape before it reaches us. How long do we wait? That's Brunhild still holding her now sleeping toddler. Until they leave. And if they don't leave, they always leave. There's nothing left for them once they've taken what they want. Hours pass. At least you think it's hours. There's no way to know for sure. People settle into uncomfortable positions, leaning against walls, sitting on the cold earth, trying to find any way to rest while staying alert. The children eventually sleep, exhausted by fear and boredom in equal measure. Even Oswin finally closes his eyes, his small body curled against your mother like a cat seeking warmth. You don't sleep. You can't. Sometime later, maybe much later, the sounds from above stop. The muffled crashes as distant shouts fade into silence. The smoke smell dissipates, drawn away through whatever cracks it came in through. Still, nobody moves. Your father and Eric exchange looks. Some kind of communication passes between them, the kind that happens between men who've known each other their whole lives and don't need words for everything. "I'll go look," Eric says. "Not alone. Someone needs to stay with the families." Your father nods. He doesn't like it, you can tell, but he nods. Eric moves toward his entrance passage, the one that opens on the far side of the hill. He moves quietly for such a big man. Years of practice, maybe. Or just the knowledge that his life depends on not being heard. He's gone for what feels like forever. When he comes back, his face tells the story before his mouth does. They're gone, headed south along the river road. I watched until I couldn't see them anymore. The village? The storehouse is ash. 2 of the houses on the north end are gone too. The ones closest to the road. He pauses. The church is still standing. Everything else between there and the south fields looks untouched. Your house is south of the church. Your father lets out a breath he's probably been holding for hours. "We wait until dark," he says. "Then we go up, a few at a time, quietly, in case they left anyone behind to watch." The waiting is the hardest part. You've survived the raid itself, hidden underground while men with swords and axes walked over your head. You should feel relief. Instead, you feel hollow, scraped out, like someone reached inside you and scooped away everything that was there before, leaving just an empty space that the fear used to fill. Your mother strokes your hair. She doesn't say anything. There's nothing to say. When darkness finally comes above and your father tells you it's time to move, your legs have gone numb from sitting so long. You stumble on the uneven passage floor, catch yourself against the wall, keep going. The night air hits you like a physical force when you emerge from the hidden entrance, cold and clean and smelling faintly of smoke. The stars are out, thousands of them scattered across a sky so dark it looks almost purple. The moon is just a sliver, not much help for seeing, but enough to make out shapes in the distance. Your father takes your hand, your mother takes your other hand. Oswin rides on her hip, finally awake again, silent now because even he understands that silence is survival. Together your family walks back toward what's left of your village. The path is familiar even in near darkness. Your feet know every dip and rise, every root that might trip you, every stone that juts up from the frozen ground. You've walked this path 1,000 times before, but tonight it feels different. Tonight it feels like the path through a land you don't recognize anymore. You smell the storehouse before you see it, that charred, wet smell of burned wood and grain. It reminds you of the time your mother scorched porridge so badly that the pot had to be scrubbed for hours. Multiply that by 1,000 and you're getting close. When you finally reach the village centre, you stop. Your whole family stops. Even Oswin, who's too young to fully understand what he's looking at. The storehouse is gone. Not damaged. Gone. Just a heap of black timbers and grey ash, still releasing thin wisps of smoke into the night air. The grain that was supposed to carry the village through winter is nothing but carbon now, mixed with the remnants of the building that held it. 2 houses to the north are the same, the Gruber family's place, the widow Marta's old cottage, black skeletons of what used to be homes, still warm enough that you can feel the heat from 20 feet away. But your house is standing. Your father walks toward it slowly, like he's approaching a wild animal that might startle and run. He pushes open the door, goes inside, comes back out a minute later. They took the grain barrel, he says, and the dried meat from the rafters, but the structure is sound. We can still live here. Your mother lets out a sound that's half laugh, half sob. She sets Oswin down and just stands there for a moment, looking at the house that is still, somehow, after everything, your home. Around you, other families are doing the same thing, emerging from the darkness, checking their homes, tallying up what's missing and what remains. Some are crying, some are silent. Old Hans is cursing steadily under his breath as he discovers that his entire supply of dried fish is gone. But everyone is alive. 43 people went underground today. 43 people came, back up. And as you stand there in the cold night air, your feet slowly going numb, your mother's hand still gripping your shoulder like she's afraid you might disappear, you understand something you didn't understand before. That hole in the ground, that earth house your grandfather carved out of nothing, that cramped dark space where you spent the worst day of your life, surrounded by the smell of fear and the sound of distant destruction. That hole saved you. It saved all of you. And now you know, with a certainty that settles into your bones like the cold, that you will never look at the earth the same way again. The ground beneath your feet isn't just dirt, it's protection, it's shelter. It's the difference between your family being alive right now and your family being dead. Your father catches your eye, nods once. You're not sure exactly what the nod means, but you think you understand. This is your inheritance, not land, not livestock, not silver or gold. This is the knowledge of how to survive. And tomorrow, when the sun rises on the ashes of the storehouse and the ruins of your neighbours' homes, you will go back down into that underground chamber with your father, and he will teach you everything he knows about maintaining it, expanding it, making it stronger, because this won't be the last time. The raiders will come again. They always come again, and when they do, you'll be ready. The sun rises grey and cold over what's left of the village. You didn't sleep much. None of you did. Your family huddled together on the straw mattress, all 4 of you piled under every blanket and fur you own, and you stared at the ceiling listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the walls. Every sound made you flinch. A branch snapping in the forest, a dog barking somewhere, the creak of settling wood. Your brain kept insisting the raiders were coming back, even though your father said they were gone, even though you watched them disappear down the south road yourself. But morning came anyway, like it always does, and with it comes the full weight of what happened. The village gathers in front of the church. It's the only building big enough to hold everyone, and Father Bernard has opened the doors even though it's not Sunday. His face looks 10 years older than it did yesterday. Everyone's face does. The storehouse is gone, the headman says. His name is Otto, and he's been running this village for longer than you've been alive. He's a big man, barrel-chested, with a voice that carries across fields when he needs it to. But today his voice sounds thin, worn down. That was 3/4 of our winter grain. The rest was in individual homes. Some of it's been taken, some is still there. He looks around at the gathered faces. About 60 people in total, counting the children. Not everyone survived the night unscathed. Marta, Henrik's pregnant wife, started having pains during the hours underground and had to be carried back to her house. The widow Brunhild's oldest boy twisted his ankle badly in the dark. Old Hans is still complaining about his fish, though nobody's really listening to him anymore. We need to take stock, Otto continues. Every family, every barrel of grain, every piece of dried meat. I need to know exactly what we have. Then we figure out how to make it last until spring. Your father steps forward. There's more food than you think. Heads turn. Otto raises an eyebrow. Underground, your father says. The storage chambers. Some families have been keeping provisions down there for years. It's cooler than any cellar. Things last longer. A murmur runs through the crowd. Some people are nodding. They know about this. Others look confused, like they're hearing about underground storage for the first time, which they might be. Not everyone shares secrets equally. How much are we talking about? Otto asks. Between Eric and me, probably enough grain for both families for 3 months, plus root vegetables, dried meat, ale. More murmurs. Some of them sound angry now. Why should your family have 3 months of food when the Gruber family lost their house and everything in it? Your father holds up a hand. I'm not saying we keep it for ourselves. I'm saying we pool everything, underground and above, share it equally. But the underground stores need to be managed carefully. The temperature stays steady down there, but only if we don't disturb it too much. Open the entrance too often, and you let the warm air out. Otto considers this. He's a practical man, which is probably why he's survived as headman for so long. Show me, he says finally. Show me what you have. And that's how you end up spending the rest of the morning underground again, this time with your father, Otto, Eric, and 2 other men from the village council. The storage chamber is different from the living chamber you saw yesterday. It's deeper, for one thing. The passage slopes down at a steeper angle, and by the time you reach the bottom, you figure you must be at least 8 feet below the surface. Maybe more. Your father lights a torch and the flickering light reveals something that makes you catch your breath. Barrels. Wooden barrels, maybe a dozen of them, lined up along the walls like soldiers standing at attention. Each one is sealed with a thick layer of what looks like tallow or clay, something to keep the air out and the moisture in. Your father taps one of them with his knuckle. Wheat, he says. Barley in the next 2. Oats after that. We rotate through them. Oldest first, newest to the back. That way nothing sits too long. Otto walks along the row, examining each barrel. His expression is unreadable, but you can see his mind working, calculating how many days of food this represents. And over here. Your father moves to the opposite wall, where the floor changes texture. Instead of packed earth, there's a large rectangular pit filled with sand. He crouches down and digs his hand into it, coming up with a carrot. Still orange, still firm. It looks like it was pulled from the garden last week, not 3 months ago. Carrots, parsnips, turnips, onions. He gestures to different sections of the sand pit. Keep them separated or the smell transfers. Learned that the hard way when everything tasted like onions for a month. How long do they last like this? Otto asks. All winter, if you do it right. The sand keeps them from touching each other, so one rotten vegetable doesn't spread to the rest, and the temperature down here stays steady enough that they don't freeze. You look around the chamber with new eyes. There's a whole system here that you never knew existed. Niches carved into the walls hold ceramic pots with wooden lids. Your father opens one and the smell hits you immediately. Honey, sweet and thick and golden even in the dim torchlight. That's the medieval version of sugar, he explains to Otto, though of course Otto probably already knows this. Lasts forever, never goes bad, worth more than silver sometimes. Another niche holds smaller pots sealed with wax. Herbs, your father says. Dried and preserved. Your wife can make anything taste decent if you've got the right herbs. But it's the ceiling that really gets you. You tilt your head back and see them, dozens of them. Legs of pork cured with salt until they're hard as wood. Strings of dried fish, their scales catching the torchlight. Sausages, dark and wrinkled, hanging from hooks driven into the wooden support beams. The smell is something else. Not bad exactly, but strong. Salt and smoke and fermented meat and something that might be aged cabbage. It's the smell of survival, the smell of making do. We smoke the meat above ground first, your father says, noticing where you're looking. Then bring it down here. The cold, dry air keeps it from spoiling. No flies either. The flies don't like it this far underground. Smart, Otto says. It's the first time you've heard him sound genuinely impressed rather than just calculating. My father figured most of it out. Trial and error mostly. Lost a whole season's worth of pork one year because he hung it too close to where the water drains. Had to dig new channels after that. He points to the floor, and now you notice the subtle slope. The chamber isn't flat. It angles slightly toward one corner, where there's a small depression lined with stones. Water gets in eventually. Rain seeps down, snow melts. If you don't have a way to drain it, you're living in a swamp by spring. This carries it down to a lower chamber, basically just a pit that fills up slowly. I empty it twice a year. Otto has been quiet for a while, taking all of this in. Finally he speaks. How many families in the village have setups like this? Your father exchanges a look with Eric. Maybe 6 or 7 that I know of. Some bigger, some smaller. The Gruber place had a small one, but it's probably filled with rubble now that the house burned. So between all of you, how much food are we talking? A longer pause. Your father does some mental math. Enough to keep maybe 30 people alive through the winter, if we're careful, if we ration properly. There are 60 of us. I know. The silence that follows is heavy. 30 people's worth of food, 60 mouths to feed. The math doesn't work no matter how you arrange it. There's another option, Eric says. He's been quiet until now, letting your father do the talking. But his voice carries a weight that makes everyone turn to look at him. The forest, Otto frowns. The forest is the Lord's land. Hunting there means your hand on a chopping block. I'm not talking about hunting. I'm talking about gathering. Nuts, roots. There are plants that grow through the winter if you know where to look. My grandmother knew them all, taught my mother taught my wife. That's women's work, one of the other councilmen mutters. Women's work might be what keeps us alive, Eric snaps back. You want to tell me your pride is worth more than your children's bellies? The councilman doesn't have an answer for that. Otto holds up a hand before the argument can escalate. We'll do both. Pool the underground stores, send gathering parties into the forest, and pray for an early spring. He looks at your father. Can you teach others to build these underground storage chambers? Not everyone has one. It takes time, more time than we have before the hard freeze sets in, but I can show them how to expand what they've got. Add capacity. It's easier to make a hole bigger than to dig a new one. Then that's what we'll do. The meeting breaks up after that. Men scatter to their various tasks, faces grim but purposeful. Having a plan helps. Even a desperate plan is better than no plan at all. Your father stays behind in the storage chamber after the others have left. You stay with him. You're not sure why. Maybe because you're still trying to process everything you've seen down here. Maybe because you sense he has more to teach you. He moves to one of the walls where there are marks scratched into the clay, lines and symbols that don't make immediate sense. This is how we keep track, he says, running his finger along the marks. Each line is a barrel. Each mark tells me what's inside and when it was stored. These circles mean grain. These crossed lines mean meat. The numbers are months. You can read numbers, he almost laughs. I can count, Agnes. I'm not educated, but I'm not stupid either. Besides, this isn't really reading. It's more like remembering. I made the system, so I know what each mark means. If I died tomorrow, nobody else could read it. Then teach me. He looks at you, really looks at you, the way he did yesterday morning before everything fell apart. There's something in his eyes that might be pride, or relief, or maybe just exhaustion mixed with hope. All right, he says, we'll start with the basics. For the next hour you learn, not from books because there are no books, not from a teacher because there are no teachers, just from your father, crouching beside you in the dim light of a torch, scratching symbols into clay with a pointed stick. Circle means grain. How many circles tells you how many barrels. A slash through the circle means the barrel is opened and being used. A cross means it's empty and needs to be refilled. Crossed lines mean meat. Position on the wall tells you which hook it's hanging from. A dot next to the crossed lines means pork. 2 dots mean fish. 3 dots mean sausage. The numbers are simpler. 1 mark for each month since storage. When the marks reach 12, the food is probably no good anymore, though some things last longer than others. Honey never gets marks because honey never goes bad. Your father thinks it might actually be immortal. What about the vegetables, you ask, pointing toward the sandpit? Those I don't track. Too many of them, and they move around too much. I just dig down and see what's there. If it's soft, throw it out. If it's firm, eat it. That's not very organised. Organisation has limits, Agnes. At some point you have to trust your hands and your nose more than marks on a wall. You think about that for a moment. Trust your hands and your nose. It's good advice for vegetables, but you suspect it applies to more than that. The torch is starting to sputter. The oil must be running low. Your father notices and starts moving toward the passage. One more thing, he says, pausing at the entrance. The temperature. You told me about that already. 50 degrees. I told you it stays steady. I didn't tell you what that means for the food. He gestures around the chamber. Above ground, in a regular cellar, things freeze in winter and rot in summer. The temperature swings are too big. Down here we're below the frost line. The earth acts like a blanket. It holds on to warmth in winter and coolness in summer. Our food doesn't freeze, doesn't rot. It just waits. He taps the wall. 3 feet of earth above our heads. That's all it takes. 3 feet between us and the cold. 3 feet between us and everything that wants to kill us up there. 3 feet. It doesn't seem like much. When you think about all the things that could go wrong, all the dangers that exist in the world above, 3 feet of dirt seems like nothing. A shovel could cut through it in an hour. A fire could dry it out and make it crumble. Heavy rain could turn it to mud that collapses in on itself. But your grandfather figured out how to make those 3 feet work. How to angle the passages so cold air couldn't settle. How to mix clay and straw so the walls wouldn't crack. How to position the entrance so it would be invisible from above. 3 feet of earth, shaped by human hands into something that could save lives. Your father is already climbing back up the passage. You follow him, one hand trailing along the smooth wall, feeling the generations of palms that have touched this same surface before you. When you emerge into the grey daylight, the village is alive with activity. Men hauling salvaged timber from the burned houses, women sorting through damaged supplies, children running errands, carrying messages from one end of the village to the other. Your mother is waiting by your house. She's got Oswin with her, and he's clutching a small wooden toy that survived the raid. A horse, carved by your father last winter. "Well?" she asks. Your father nods. "We'll make it. It'll be close, but we'll make it." She closes her eyes for a moment. When she opens them again, there are tears on her cheeks, but she's smiling. "Then let's get to work," she says. And you do. All of you. The whole village, working together like fingers on the same hand. Because that's how you survive. Not alone. Not hiding in your house pretending the world outside doesn't exist. You survive by pooling what you have, sharing what you know, and trusting that when the next disaster comes, you'll face it together. Underground, where the earth itself becomes your ally. 3 days after the raid, your father hands you a spade. It's not like the tools you've seen the wealthy farmers use. Those have smooth wooden handles and iron blades that gleam in the light. This one is older than you are, maybe older than your father. The handle is rough, worn down by countless hands over countless years, until the wood has taken on a dark, oily sheen. The iron blade is pitted and scratched, sharpened so many times that it's noticeably thinner on one side than the other. This was your grandfather's, your father says. He dug half the chambers with this. The other half he dug with a pick that broke 20 winters ago and had to be reforged. The blacksmith still complains about that job. You take the spade. It's heavier than you expected. The balance is wrong somehow, like someone attached a rock to the end of a stick and called it a tool. But when you hold it the way your father shows you, hands positioned just so, the weight shifts and suddenly it feels like an extension of your arm. Every tool in this village has a story, your father continues. This spade has dug more holes than you can count. Graves, cellars, ditting channels for irrigation. But underground work is what it was made for. The blade is narrower than a farming spade. See? That's intentional. In a tight passage, you need to be able to swing without hitting the walls. He takes it back for a moment, demonstrating the motion. Short, controlled strokes, not the wide arcs you'd use in a field. Today, you learn to dig, he says, handing it back. Not just any digging, underground digging. It's different. You're standing at the edge of the village, near the hillside where your family's earth house is hidden. But you're not going down into it. Instead, you're standing in front of a patch of ground that looks exactly like every other patch of ground around it. The Gruber family lost their house, your father explains. Lost their underground chamber too. The collapse filled it with rubble. They're staying with relatives now, but they need a new one. Headman Otto wants us to teach them how to build. Us. He said us. Like you're part of this now. Like you know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing, but you're about to learn. The Grubers arrive a few minutes later. Klaus Gruber is a thin man with nervous hands and a wife named Hilda, who looks like she hasn't slept since the fire. Their 2 children, a boy about your age named Friedrich, and a girl maybe 8 named Lotta, trail behind them looking lost. Show me where you want it, your father says. Klaus leads him to a spot on the hillside not far from where your own entrance is hidden. Here, he says, this is where ours was before. We know the area. Your father crouches down and examines the ground, picks up a handful of dirt, lets it sift through his fingers, frowns. Not here. But our old chamber, your old chamber collapsed. There's a reason for that. Your father stands and points to a spot about 20 feet to the left. There, that's where you build. Klaus looks confused. The two spots look identical to you. Grass, dirt, some rocks. What's the difference? Your father must see the question in everyone's faces because he walks over to the spot Klaus originally chose and stomps his foot on the ground. The thud is hollow, almost like hitting a drum. Hear that? There's a natural cavity under here, a gap in the rock, probably from water running through years ago. Build on top of that and your walls have nothing solid to rest against. They'll shift, crack, eventually fall in. He walks to the spot he recommended and stomps again. This thud is solid, dense, the sound of packed earth all the way down. Here, you've got clay mixed with stone. It'll hold. You file this information away. Listen to the ground. The ground will tell you if it's safe. We start by clearing the surface, your father says. Agnes, show them. Wait. What? He's looking at you with that expression he gets when he's testing you. Seeing if you've been paying attention. You have been. You just didn't realize you'd be the one demonstrating. You step forward, trying to project confidence you don't feel, and start scraping away the dead grass and loose topsoil with your grandfather's spade. The key, you remember from watching your father work on repairs last year, is to cut a clean edge. Mark out your boundaries first, then work inward. Square or rectangle, you say, your voice steadier than you expected. Never round. Round looks easier, but the walls are harder to brace. Square walls can lean against wooden beams. Round walls need more support. Your father nods. There's something in his eyes that might be pride. You cut a rectangle into the earth, about 6 feet by 8 feet. Big enough for a storage chamber, small enough to dig in a reasonable time. The grass comes away in clumps, roots clinging to the soil like they're trying to hold on. Now, your father says, taking over, we dig. And you do, for hours. The first foot is the hardest, which doesn't make sense until your father explains it. The surface layer is full of roots, rocks, old bones from animals that died here years ago. Every thrust of the spade hits something that stops you cold. You spend as much time clearing debris as you do actually moving earth. But once you get past that first foot, things change. The soil becomes more uniform. Clay, mostly, packed tight by the weight of everything above it. It doesn't crumble when you cut into it. It holds its shape like bread dough, dense and heavy. This is what you want, your father says, holding up a clod of the clay. See how it sticks together? When we pack this into walls, it'll stay put. Sandy soil falls apart. Pure mud turns to slop when it rains. But clay mixed with a little sand and a little rock, that's your building material right there. The sun moves across the sky. Your arms start to burn, then your shoulders, then your back. Muscles you didn't know you had are screaming at you to stop, but you don't stop because everyone else is still digging, and you're not going to be the first one to quit. By midday, the hole is 3 feet deep. Your father calls for a rest. You collapse against a tree, breathing hard, and wonder how anyone ever built anything before machines existed. Your grandfather dug chambers twice this size with nothing but hand tools. It seems impossible now. Superhuman. The hard part is over, your father says, handing you a water skin. First 3 feet are the worst. After that, the earth is more consistent. Fewer surprises. How deep do we go? For storage, 6 feet is enough. For living quarters, 8 is better. Deeper means more stable temperature, but it also means more digging and more risk of hitting water. Water, right. You remember what he said before about the water table? Building near rivers during dry seasons means flooding come spring. How do you know where the water is? Your father points to a cluster of trees about 30 yards away. See how those willows are greener than everything else? Their roots go deep. They're drinking from groundwater that's close to the surface. Dig there and you'll hit water within 4 feet. Dig here, where the grass is shorter and browner and the water's much deeper, maybe 12 feet, maybe more. You look around with new eyes. The landscape that seemed flat and featureless before is suddenly full of information. The height of the grass, the types of trees, the way the ground dips slightly in some areas and rises in others. All of it telling stories about what's underneath. The afternoon is spent learning about walls. Your father shows you how to mix clay with straw, working the two together until the straw is evenly distributed throughout. The straw acts like bones inside the clay, holding everything together. Without it, the walls would crack every time the temperature changed. With it, they flex just enough to survive. Some builders use animal hair instead of straw, your father explains, kneading a lump of the mixture between his palms. Works better, actually. Stronger bond. But you need a lot of it, and unless you're slaughtering a whole herd, you won't have enough. Straw we've got plenty of. He hands you a lump to work. The clay is cold against your skin, gritty with sand and bits of stone. The straw pokes at your fingers as you knead, leaving small scratches that you know will sting later when you wash. The trick is getting the mixture wet enough to stick but dry enough to hold its shape. Too wet and it sags, too dry and it crumbles. You'll learn the feel of it after a while. Your hands will know before your head does. Like a rope bridge, your father says. A solid bridge breaks when it swings. A rope bridge moves with the wind. Same thing here. The walls need to give a little or they'll give a lot. There's also the matter of wood. Every underground chamber needs support beams and good timber is precious. But here's something your father shows you that changes how you think about it. See this beam? He points to a crooked piece of wood he salvaged from the Gruber's burned house. It's curved, twisted, the kind of thing a carpenter would throw away without a second thought. Above ground, this is garbage, but down here, perfect. He positions it against the wall of the new chamber. The curve fits naturally into the corner, bracing against both surfaces at once. Straight beams push in one direction. Curved beams spread the force out. Underground, where the earth is pressing from all sides, curved is better than straight every time. You think about the wooden beams in your own family's chambers. How many of them are crooked pieces that got rejected from other projects? Suddenly your grandfather seems even more clever than before. He wasn't just building with scraps because that's all he had. He was building with scraps because scraps were better for this kind of work. Hilda Gruber turns out to have a talent for the clay work. Her hands, which looked so tired and lost this morning, work the clay mixture with surprising skill. She's used to kneading bread dough, she explains. This isn't so different. Her husband Klaus is better at the heavy lifting, hauling buckets of clay from the nearby stream bank where the best stuff can be found. Friedrich, their son, takes over your spade when your arms give out completely, and he attacks the earth with the kind of energy that only comes from being 13 and having something to prove. The village blacksmith shows up around mid-afternoon. His name is Conrad, and he's built like the forge he works at, all broad shoulders and thick, arms covered in old burn scars. He's carrying a pick over one shoulder like it weighs nothing. Heard you might need this, he says, dropping it at your father's feet. Your father examines the pick. It's not new, but it's been well maintained. The iron head is sharp, the wooden handle smooth. This'll help with the deeper sections. Klaus, come here. Let me show you how to use it without killing yourself. The pick is for breaking through the harder layers. the ones where clay has compacted into something close to rock. You can't cut through that with the spade. You have to crack it first, then scoop out the pieces. It's slower work, but necessary. Klaus takes the pick and swings. The first blow glances off the packed earth at an angle, sending vibrations up the handle that nearly knock him off his feet. "Not like that," your father says. "You're fighting the ground. Don't fight the ground. Let the weight of the tool do the work. Short swings, controlled. Hit the same spot twice before you move." Klaus tries again. Better this time. The pick bites into the clay and comes away with a chunk the size of his fist. "There you go. That's the motion. Now do that about 800 more times." Klaus laughs. It's a tired laugh, but genuine. You realise it might be the first time he's laughed since the fire. Conrad the blacksmith stays to watch for a while, arms crossed over his chest. He's got opinions about everything, which comes from spending your whole life making tools for people who don't know how to use them properly. "You're building the walls too thick," he says eventually. Your father looks up, surprised. "Too thick? For storage, that's fine. But if you're planning to use this as a hiding place too, you want thinner walls with more chambers, easier to expand later, easier to connect to neighbours." Your father considers this, nods slowly. "He's right. We've been thinking about this wrong. It's not just one hole in the ground, it's part of a network. The more connections, the more escape routes. So you adjust, make the walls thinner, plan for a passage that will eventually connect to your family's chambers, giving the Grubers a way out if their entrance gets blocked. By evening, the main chamber is roughed out. 6 feet deep, walls already starting to take shape with the clay-straw mixture. It's not finished, not even close, but it's a start. Your father lights a small fire near the entrance, and everyone gathers around it. The flames cast dancing shadows across the raw earth walls of the new chamber. It looks like a wound in the hillside right now, exposed and vulnerable. But tomorrow you'll start on the ceiling supports, and after that the entrance concealment, and after that the connecting passage. Layer by layer, like building anything worth building. One step at a time. "My grandfather told me something once," your father says, staring into the fire. "He said the earth doesn't care about us, doesn't love us, doesn't hate us. It's just there. But if you learn to work with it instead of against it, if you listen to what it's telling you, it'll shelter you better than any king's castle." Klaus Gruber is sitting with his arm around his wife. Their children are already half asleep, exhausted from a day of work they've never done before. But there's something different in Klaus's face now. Something that wasn't there this morning. Hope, maybe. Or just the knowledge that he's not helpless, that he can build something with his own hands that will protect his family. You feel it too. Your muscles ache. Your hands are raw, blistered in places where the spade handle rubbed them wrong. You're covered in clay dust and sweat and probably smell like a stable. But underneath all of that, there's a quiet satisfaction. You dug today. You built. You learned, and tomorrow you'll do it again. Your mother finds you as the fire is dying down and the families are starting to head home. She's been helping organise the food distribution all day, making sure everyone gets their share of the pooled supplies. "You did good," she says simply. It's not much, 3 words. But from your mother, who doesn't waste words on things she doesn't mean, it feels like a blessing. You walk home together through the dark, your father on one side, your mother on the other, Oswin already asleep and being carried over your father's shoulder. The stars are out again, thousands of them scattered across the sky like someone spilled a bag of diamonds. Somewhere in that sky, you think, there might be gods watching, or maybe not. Maybe there's nothing up there but cold light from fires so far away they burned out before your grandmother's grandmother was born. But down here, beneath your feet, there's earth, solid, reliable, eternal earth, and you're learning its secrets, one spadeful at a time. The thought carries you home, through the door of your small house, into the straw bed that suddenly feels softer than anything you've ever slept on. You're asleep before your head touches the pillow. And for the first time since the raid, you don't dream about fire. 2 weeks into winter, your father takes you on what he calls the walking tour. "You know our chambers," he says, pulling on his heaviest cloak against the morning chill. "You know Eric's, but there's more, a lot more, and if something happens to me, you need to know the whole network. The whole network." The words send a little thrill through you, half excitement and half fear. You knew there were tunnels connecting different families. You've been through the one to Eric's twice now, but you didn't realize there was a whole system. How many are there? 7 families connected directly, 3 more that are close enough to reach through exits on the other side of the hill. Your father counts on his fingers. That's about 30 adults who can move underground without ever coming to the surface. Add the children, and we're pushing 50. 50 people, an entire village within a village, hidden beneath the frozen earth. You start at your own entrance, the one disguised under the pile of stones that looks like a collapsed wall. Down the familiar steps, into the living chamber with its carved walls and sleeping platform, then past the storage chamber where the barrels of grain and hanging meats have already been dipped into twice since the raid. But instead of stopping there, your father keeps going. There's a passage at the back of the storage chamber that you've noticed before but never explored. It's narrower than the main corridors, barely wide enough for your shoulders. Your father has to turn sideways to squeeze through. "This is a schlupf," he says, his voice echoing strangely in the tight space. A slip passage. Connecting tunnels are built narrow on purpose, makes it harder for attackers to follow. One person with a knife could hold off an army in a space like this. You believe him. The walls press in on both sides and you have to duck your head to avoid scraping against the ceiling. If someone tried to fight in here, they'd barely be able to swing their arm. The schlupf opens into another chamber after about 20 feet. This one is smaller than yours, maybe half the size, but decorated differently. Instead of the simple crosses and handprints that cover your walls, these walls are covered in carved animals. Deer, birds, what might be a boar. The work is rough but detailed, each animal caught mid-motion like they're about to leap off the clay and run. "This is the Müller family's shelter," your father says. "Old Franz carved these when he was young, said it kept him sane during the long winters. Old Franz is dead now, has been for years, but his carvings are still here, still watching over whoever takes shelter in his chambers. His son Bertram lives above ground with his wife and 3 children. They weren't home during the raid. Lucky. Or maybe not luck. Maybe Bertram knew something was coming and got his family out early. From here, 2 more connections. Your father points to opposite walls where narrow passages disappear into darkness. That way leads to the Vogels. The other way goes to the tanner's place. Ulrich. You know his daughter. You do know his daughter. Greta. She's about your age. Quiet. Smells faintly of leather and lye from her father's work. You've never thought much about her before. Now you're realizing her family is part of this underground web, connected to yours by tunnels dug by hands that might be dust now. The tour continues. Each chamber you enter is different. The Vogels have carved shelves directly into their walls, dozens of them, holding ceramic pots and wooden boxes that contain God knows what. Their main room has a ceiling that's higher than most, maybe 7 feet, and when you ask about it, Herr Vogel explains that his father was a tall man who got tired of ducking. Dug an extra 2 feet just so he could stand up. Straight, Vogel says with a shrug. Took him an entire summer, but then my father was a stubborn man. Ulrich the tanner has a chamber that smells slightly of chemicals, and your father explains that he keeps some of his curing solutions down here, where the temperature stays consistent. Leather cures better in the cold, your father says. He figured that out years ago. Now half his business happens underground. The nobles buy his leather and never know it was made in a hole in the ground. There's something funny about that. Rich people wearing cloaks and boots that came from a peasant's underground workshop, thinking they're better than the hands that made them. Old Gerda's chambers are the most surprising. You expected something small and simple, given that she lives alone since her husband died and her children scattered to other villages. Instead, you find a space that's been carved over decades, maybe longer. 3 connected rooms, each one flowing into the next through wide archways that someone took the time to make beautiful. Her husband started this before I was born, your father says, kept adding to it year after year. By the time he died, it was the biggest complex in the village. Gerda still maintains it all by herself. The old woman is down here now, sitting on a carved bench in the main room. She looks different underground. Younger somehow, more at ease. Like this is where she really lives and the house above is just for show. Wolf, she says, nodding at your father, and little Agnes. Learning the ways, are you? Trying, you say. Good. We need more young ones who understand. Too many people think they can just dig a hole and call it safe. It takes knowledge, takes patience. She gestures around her chamber. My husband spent 40 winters perfecting this. Every angle, every passage, every stone. And I've spent 20 more keeping it from falling apart. You maintain all this yourself? She laughs, a dry sound like leaves rustling. What else am I going to do? Sit in my house and wait to die? Down here I'm useful. Down here my hands remember what they're for. Your father leaves you with Gerda for an hour while he checks on some repairs elsewhere in the network. The old woman takes this as an opportunity to educate you in ways your father apparently hasn't. Men dig, she says, leading you through her chambers with a lamp. That's what they're good at. Moving earth, building walls, but women maintain. We're the ones who notice when something's wrong before it becomes a disaster. She stops at a wall and presses her palm against it. Feel this. You put your hand next to hers. The clay is cool, slightly damp. That's moisture seeping through. Not enough to worry about today. But if nobody deals with it, in 6 months this wall is mush. She pulls out a small pouch from her belt and removes what looks like a paste made from fat and ash. You smear this on the wet spots, seals the pores in the clay, stops the water from getting worse, she demonstrates, rubbing the paste into the wall in circular motions until it disappears into the surface. Once a month, I walk every wall in this complex, takes half a day. Most of the time I find nothing, but the times I do find something, that's when it matters. She also shows you what to look for in the support beams. Cracks that run along the grain, which are fine. Cracks that run across the grain, which mean the wood is failing and needs to be replaced before it brings the ceiling down. There's a beam in her back chamber that she's been watching for 3 years, waiting to see if a hairline crack will spread or stay stable. Some problems you fix right away. Some you watch and wait. The trick is knowing which is which. She hands you a small jar of the sealing paste. Take this. Start maintaining your family's chambers. Your father digs, your mother cooks. but someone needs to walk the walls. Someone needs to catch the problems before they become disasters. You take the jar. It's heavier than it looks, the fat and ash mixture dense and cold against your palm. A responsibility, given physical form. You follow her through more passages, learning as you go. There are ventilation shafts, narrow holes that angle up to the surface to let fresh air in without letting cold air settle. They're disguised above ground as animal burrows or gaps between rocks. You'd never notice them if you didn't know to look. There are drainage channels, carved into the floors with subtle slopes that guide any water toward collection pits, where it can be scooped out. There are storage niches built into unexpected places, behind support beams and underfloor platforms, hiding spaces within hiding spaces. And then there are the false walls. Gerda shows you one in her deepest chamber. It looks like every other wall, packed clay reinforced with straw. But when she presses a certain spot, a section of it swings inward on a hidden wooden frame. Behind it is another room, tiny, barely big enough for 4 people to crouch, but completely invisible from the main chamber. If they ever find the tunnels, Gerda says, if they ever come down here looking for us, this is where you go. Nobody knows about these except the families who built them, not even the village council. You stare at the hidden room. There are supplies in there, dried food, water skins, a small lamp, everything you'd need to survive for days, maybe weeks, while enemies search the chambers you'd seemingly abandoned. My husband built this during the worst of the raids, 50 years ago when the Norse were still coming. We hid in here for 3 days once while strangers walked through our main chambers, looking for treasure that wasn't there. 3 days? 3 days, with 2 children and a baby who couldn't cry because I kept my hand over her mouth. That was your Aunt Marta. She never talks about it, but she remembers. You can see it in her eyes, sometimes when spaces get too small. You think about Marta, Henrik the blacksmith's wife, pregnant and uncomfortable during the raid 2 weeks ago. You wonder if her fear of tight spaces comes from those 3 days in a hidden room, a baby too young to understand why silence was survival. Every family should have a hidden room, Gerda says, closing the false wall. It clicks back into place, invisible again. I've told your father this. He's working on one, but he hasn't finished yet. When he does, you should know where it is. The rest of the tour takes most of the day. You learn about the warning systems. There are 3 ways to signal danger. The church bell above ground, which everyone knows. A series of horn blasts from the watchman's post on the eastern hill, and a 3rd system, underground only, that your father shows you with obvious pride. In the main passage between your chambers and Eric's, there's a hollow section of wall. When you strike it with your palm in a certain rhythm, the sound carries through the packed earth to connected chambers. Anyone listening will hear a dull thump, thump, thump that doesn't sound like anything natural. 3 fast hits means get underground now, your father explains. 3 slow hits means all clear. 2 fast and 1 slow means meet at the central chamber, Eric's place, for a count. What if someone's too far away to hear? The sound passes through the walls. Each person who hears it repeats it in their section. Message can travel the whole network in less than a minute. You practice the signals until your palm stings. 3 fast, 3 slow, 2 and 1. Simple patterns, but they could save lives. What if someone's deaf, you ask? Or if they can't hear well? Your father nods, like he's been waiting for this question. Feel the wall when you strike it. You press your palm flat against the clay while he thumps the signal pattern, and there it is. Not just sound, but vibration. A pulse running through the earth itself. The deaf feel it through their hands, he says. That's why we always signal on the same wall sections. Everyone knows where to put their palm. It's such a small thing, but it changes how you think about the whole system. Someone, at some point, thought about the people who couldn't hear, thought about how to include them, built the system so nobody would be left behind. Your grandmother was going deaf at the end, your father adds quietly. She's the one who figured out the vibration part, said if she had to die, she wasn't going to die because her ears stopped working. By the time you emerge from the underground, the winter sun is already setting. The day passed faster below than it felt. Something about being in those chambers makes time work differently. Maybe it's the lack of natural light, or the steady temperature that never changes, or just the weight of all that earth pressing down on you, patient and eternal. Your mother has supper waiting. Pottage, again, thick with whatever vegetables could be spared from the dwindling stores. But there's a small piece of salt pork floating in your bowl, a luxury that makes you feel guilty and grateful at the same time. How was it? She asks. Big, you say, because that's the only word that feels right. I didn't know it was so big. Your father smiles. It's a rare expression on his weathered face. Your grandfather started it. I added to it. Someday you'll add more. That's how these things grow, generation by generation, like rings on a tree. Oswin is sitting across from you, attacking his pottage with the single-minded focus of a 7-year-old who's been outside all day. He looks up. Can I see? He asks. Can I see the tunnels? Your parents exchange a look, some kind of silent communication that married people develop after years of practice. Soon, your father says, when you're a little older, when you can keep a secret. I can keep secrets? Can you remember the signal patterns? 3 fast means what? Oswin's face screws up in concentration. It means run. Close. It means get underground now. 3 slow means all clear. 2 fast and 1 slow. I don't know. Then you're not ready yet. But soon. Oswin pouts, but he doesn't argue. Even at 7 he understands that some knowledge has to be earned. You finish your supper in comfortable silence. The fire crackles in the hearth, its warmth spreading through the small room. Outside the wind is picking up again, whistling through the gaps in the walls like always. But tonight the sound doesn't bother you as much, because you know that beneath your feet, connected by tunnels and passages and hidden rooms, there's a whole other village waiting. A village that can't freeze, can't burn, can't be found by anyone who doesn't know the secrets. You think about Gerda's false wall, about the baby who couldn't cry, about the 40 winters her husband spent building something that saved his family again and again. And you think about what you'll build, what rooms you'll carve, what passages you'll dig, what secrets you'll pass on to your own children someday. The earth remembers, your father said once, and now you're starting to understand what he meant. It's not just dirt, it's memory, it's safety, it's home. You help your mother clean the bowls while your father banks the fire for the night. Oswin is already curled up on the straw bed, thumb in his mouth, breathing steady with sleep. Tomorrow there will be more work, more digging, more learning, more preparation for whatever winter throws at you next. But tonight, you're warm, you're fed, you're surrounded by family, and somewhere beneath you, the tunnels wait, patient as stone, ready when you need them. The blizzard comes in late January and it doesn't stop. You've seen bad storms before. Everyone has. Storms that pile snow against the doors so high you have to dig your way out in the morning. Storms that freeze the water in the bucket by the hearth even with the fire burning. But this one is different. This one howls for 3 days straight, Wind screaming through the village like something alive and angry. Snow falling so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face. By the second day, the drifts are higher than your house. By the third day, you can't open the door at all. Underground, your father says, and nobody argues. You pack what you can carry. Extra blankets, the last of the dried meat from the rafters, the ceramic pot of honey that your mother guards like it's made of gold. Oswin clings to his wooden horse, the one your father carved. Your mother wraps her silver cross tight in a piece of cloth and tucks it inside her dress. The walk to the hidden entrance takes twice as long as usual. The snow is up to your waist in places, and the wind cuts through your clothes like they're made of nothing. By the time you reach the pile of stones and brush away enough snow to find the cover, your fingers are so numb you can barely feel them. But then you're underground, and the relief is immediate. The wind vanishes, the cold softens. That steady 50 degrees wraps around you like a blanket, and for a moment you just stand there in the passage, listening to your own breathing slow down. You're not the first ones down. Eric's family's already here, and the Vogels, and old Gerda, who probably came down at the first sign of serious snow. More people filter in over the next hour. The Mullers, Ulrich the tanner and his quiet daughter Greta, the widow Brunhild with her 4 children, the youngest riding on her hip, and Henrik the blacksmith's son practically carrying his wife Marta down the steps. Marta looks terrible. Her face is grey, slick with sweat despite the cold journey. Her belly is huge now, much bigger than it was during the raid a month ago, and she's making small sounds with each step, little grunts of pain that she's trying to hide. "How long?" your mother asks, taking Marta's arm and helping Henrik guide her to the sleeping platform. "Since this morning," Henrik says, his voice is shaking. She didn't want to say anything, thought it would pass. Your mother and Gerda exchange a look. That look women get when men are being useless about women's matters. "It's not going to pass," Gerda says flatly. "This baby's coming whether the storm stops or not." Henrik goes pale. Actually pale, like someone drained the blood from his face with a bucket. He's a blacksmith. He works with fire and iron and things that could kill him every day. But watching his wife prepare to give birth in an underground chamber during a blizzard is apparently where his courage runs out. "Go check on the drainage channels," your mother tells him. "Make sure they're clear. We might be down here for days." It's busy work. Everyone knows it's busy work. But Henrik latches onto the task like a drowning man grabbing a rope and disappears down the passage toward the storage chamber. "Agnes," your mother says, "come here. You've never seen a baby born before. You know the basics, the way any village girl does. You've seen animals give birth plenty of times, and you know humans aren't all that different in the important ways. But knowing something and doing something are 2 completely different things." The next hours blur together. Marta labours on the sleeping platform surrounded by furs and blankets, while the women of the village take turns holding her hands and wiping her forehead. The men stay in the other chambers, keeping the children distracted, keeping the supplies organised, keeping out of the way. Your father has Oswin and is telling him stories about knights and dragons, his voice carrying faintly through the passages. You become your mother's extra pair of hands. Fetch clean cloth. Bring water from the storage barrel. Hold this. Press here. Don't let go until I tell you. Marta screams once near the end, a raw animal sound that echoes off the clay walls and makes everyone in the connected chambers go quiet. Then there's a wet sliding noise, and then a new sound. Crying. Thin and high and alive. "A girl," your mother says, and her voice cracks on the word. She's holding something small and red and squirming. Something that's kicking its tiny legs against the air like it's trying to swim. Healthy lungs, good colour, 10 fingers, 10 toes. She hands the baby to Marta, who takes her with hands that are trembling from exhaustion. Henrik appears in the entrance, his face still pale but now mixed with something else. Wonder, maybe, or terror. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. A daughter, Marta whispers. Look, Henrik. A daughter. Henrik drops to his knees beside the sleeping platform. He's crying. This huge man who bends iron for a living, crying like a child over the tiny pink thing in his wife's arms. What will you name her? Gerda asks. Marta looks around the chamber, at the clay walls, the carved decorations, the lamp flames flickering in their niches, at the faces of the people who helped bring her daughter into the world, underground, in the middle of a blizzard that's still howling somewhere far above them. Erdine, she says. It means from the earth. Nobody speaks for a moment. It's not a common name. But down here, surrounded by earth on all sides, it feels right. Erdine, born in a hole in the ground, in a chamber carved by dead men's hands, while the world above tried its best to freeze everything alive. The storm continues for 2 more days. You settle into a rhythm. The kind of routine that develops when people are forced to live in close quarters with no clear end in sight. Mornings start with a count. Headman Otto walks through all the connected chambers, counting heads, making sure everyone's accounted for. Then breakfast, which is smaller than it should be because supplies are running low and nobody knows how long this will last. After breakfast, the children get restless. There's only so much you can do in an underground chamber, and most of it gets boring fast. So the adults take turns entertaining them. Your father tells stories. He's not particularly good at it. His voice flat and his pacing awkward. But the children don't seem to care. They huddle around him in the passage between chambers, eyes wide, as he describes battles between kings that probably never happened, and monsters that definitely don't exist. And then the knight raised his sword, your father says, his voice dropping low, and the dragon opened its mouth and fire came pouring out like a river of death. What happened next? Oswin demands. The knight ducked, just in time. The fire went right over his head, so close it singed the feathers on his helmet. Knights don't have feathers on their helmets, one of the Brunhild children objects. This one did. He was a special knight. The children accept this logic without further complaint. That's the thing about stories underground. The rules are different. Normal doesn't exist down here, so why should it exist in the tales? Old Hans, who lost all his dried fish in the raid and hasn't stopped complaining about it since, turns out to be surprisingly good with children. He teaches them games, knucklebones, played with actual bones he pulls from his pocket. A counting game where you try to guess how many fingers someone's holding behind their back. A memory game where you have to repeat back longer and longer sequences of words. Red fox, fat pig, old boot, Hans says. Red fox, fat pig, old boot, the children chorus back. Red fox, fat pig, old boot, broken wheel. Red fox, fat pig, old boot, broken wheel. Red fox, fat pig, old boot, broken wheel. Frozen puddle, angry goat. The sequence grows until someone misses a word and has to drop out. Usually it's Greta, the tanner's daughter, who wins. She has a mind like a trap, can remember sequences of 20 words without breaking a sweat. The other children have started calling her the Keeper because she keeps everything locked up in her head. There are other rituals too. Midday prayers, led by whoever remembers the most words. Evening songs, quietly, so as not to disturb the babies. The lighting of fresh lamps when the old ones sputter out, which becomes a kind of ceremony, a marker of time passing in a place where time doesn't really exist. The women do what women always do: cook with limited supplies, care for the sick and the newborn, mend clothes that are falling apart, talk in low voices about things they don't want the children to hear. You find yourself pulled in different directions, too old to play children's games, too young to sit with the women and their serious conversations. So you do what feels natural. You walk the walls. Every day, at least once, you trace the path that Gerda showed you. Start in your family's chamber. Move through each connected space. Press your palm against the clay, feeling for dampness. Look at the support beams, checking for new cracks. Make sure the drainage channels aren't blocked. Gerda watches you do this on the second day and nods approvingly. "Good," she says. "You're paying attention. It's something to do. It's more than that. It's necessary. Underground spaces don't maintain themselves. They need people watching, caring. Otherwise they fall apart." She pauses, her old eyes catching the lamplight. Like anything worth having, really. You think about that while you walk. The walls press close, but not in a threatening way anymore. They've become familiar. The bumps and grooves of the clay, the particular smell of each chamber, the way sound carries differently depending on where you stand. You're learning this place the way you learned the fields above ground, every corner and crevice becoming part of you. On the fourth day underground, the Muller boys get into a fight. It starts over nothing. One of them took the other's spot on the sleeping platform, or one of them looked at the other wrong, or one of them breathed too loud. The reasons don't matter. What matters is that suddenly there are two boys, maybe 10 and 12 years old, rolling on the dirt floor trying to punch each other while their father tries to separate them. Your father helps pull them apart. One boy ends up in your family's chamber, the other in Eric's, separated by 30 feet of earth and 2 narrow passages. "That's the danger," Gerda says later when things have calmed down. Not the cold, not the raiders, the cabin fever. Spending too long in close quarters makes people crazy. They start seeing enemies in their own families. How do you stop it? You don't stop it. You manage it. Give people tasks. Keep them busy. Make sure everyone has a little bit of space, even if it's just a corner to call their own. And watch for the signs. When someone starts getting that look in their eyes, the twitchy one, that's when you step in. You look around the chamber. Everyone's doing something. Your mother is teaching Brunhild's oldest daughter how to mend a torn seam. Henrik is showing Oswin how to carve a simple pattern into a piece of scrap wood. Eric is playing knucklebones with his children while his wife nurses baby Adine, giving Marta a break. Everyone busy, everyone with a task, not by accident. The people who survive down here longest, Gerda continues, are the ones who find meaning in small things. A well-carved spoon, a story told perfectly, a wall that stays dry. The big victories are rare, but the small ones are everywhere if you learn to see them. You file that away with everything else she's taught you, meaning in small things, victories everywhere. That night, before you fall asleep on the straw-covered floor between your mother and your brother, you look up at the low ceiling above you. Someone carved a sun up there, years ago. A simple circle with rays coming off it. It's the only sun you've seen in 4 days, but somehow that's enough. On the 5th day, the silence wakes you up. You lie still for a moment, trying to figure out what's different. Then you realize the wind. You can't hear the wind anymore. You've gotten so used to that distant howling, that muffled roar that never quite stopped, that its absence feels louder than its presence. The storm is over. Your father is already awake. He catches your eye and puts a finger to his lips. Quietly, so as not to wake the others, he He gestures for you to follow him. You make your way to the entrance passage, stepping over sleeping bodies, avoiding the trip hazards of bags and bundles scattered across the floor. The wooden cover is still in place, but your father presses his ear against it, listening. Nothing. He waits, counts to 100 probably. Then he pushes the cover up just a crack, letting in a sliver of grey light that makes you squint after days of nothing but lamp glow. Fresh air rushes in, cold, clean, unbelievably cold, but also fresh. You'd forgotten what fresh air smelled like. Your father opens the cover fully and pulls himself up. You follow. The world above is white, completely white. Snow has covered everything in a smooth, unbroken blanket that makes the landscape look alien, like somewhere you've never been. The sun is just starting to rise, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. No one would know there are houses beneath this. No one would guess that a village exists here at all. Just smooth white nothing, stretching in every direction. Beautiful, your father says. It's not a word he uses often. Deadly, you reply. He laughs. A real laugh. The first one you've heard from him in days. Both. Same thing sometimes. You stand there together, father and daughter, breathing the cold air and watching the sun rise over a world that tried to kill you and failed. 5 days underground. 40-something people crammed into chambers meant for half that many. A baby born in the earth. 2 boys who nearly killed each other over a sleeping spot. Countless small moments of kindness and frustration and boredom and fear. And now it's over. Until the next time. You go back down to help wake the others. There's work to do. Snow to clear. Damage to assess. Food to ration for the rest of winter. But first, breakfast. And for the first time in almost a week you'll eat it in sunlight. Spring comes slowly, the way it always does. One day you notice the icicles are dripping instead of growing. The next day there's a patch of mud where solid ice used to be. Then suddenly the birds are back and the air smells different, and winter feels like something that happened to someone else a long time ago. But underground, spring means something else entirely. Water, Gerda says, the first warm day of March. That's what you need to watch for now. All that snow has to go somewhere, and somewhere is down. She's right. You notice it on your morning walk, through the chambers. The walls that stayed dry all winter are starting to sweat. Little beads of moisture forming on the clay, gathering into drops, running down to pool in the drainage channels. The channels your father dug years ago, the ones that seemed almost excessive when you first learned about them. Now you understand why he made them so deep. The frost line is thawing, your father explains when you mention it to him. All that frozen ground is turning to mud, and mud moves, seeps, finds every crack and gap. You spend the next week doing nothing but water management, clearing debris from drainage channels, checking the collection pits, making sure the slopes are still working, still guiding water away from the living spaces and toward the exits where it can drain safely outside. It's boring work, repetitive. Your knees ache from crawling through low passages, and your hands are constantly cold and wet. But every time you clear a blocked channel and watch the backed-up water start flowing again, there's a small satisfaction in it. A tiny victory, like Gerda talked about. You find a bird's nest wedged into one of the ventilation shafts. A wren, probably, looking for shelter during the winter and never leaving. The nest is blocking half the airflow, and when you pull it out, you find 3 tiny skeletons inside. Chicks that never made it. You say a small prayer for them, because it seems like the right thing to do, and then you clear the rest of the debris and move on. That's life down here. Things die in the dark sometimes. You find them and you deal with them and you keep going. The Grubers have trouble. Their new chamber, the one you helped dig after the raid, wasn't designed with spring thaw in mind. Klaus dug the drainage channels, but he dug them level instead of sloped, water pools instead of flowing. And one morning in mid-March you hear shouting from their direction. Your father is already there when you arrive, ankle deep in muddy water, helping Klaus and his wife Hilda move their supplies to higher ground. Their sleeping platform is soaked. Their stored grain is sitting in an inch of brown water that's getting deeper by the minute. The collection pit is full, Klaus says, panic in his voice. I emptied it yesterday. Where is all this water coming from? Everywhere, your father says. The whole hillside is draining. You need a second outlet. They work through the day, digging a new channel that connects the Gruber chamber to the main network. It's emergency work. Sloppy. Not the careful construction you learned about last autumn. But it does the job. By evening, the water level is dropping and the Grubers are wringing out their blankets with relief on their faces. Should have listened to you, Klaus tells your father. You told me to slope the channels. I thought level was good enough. Now you know. Now I know. That's how lessons get learned down here. The hard way usually, but at least they get learned. April brings mud and more mud. The fields above are too wet to work, so people spend their time on other tasks, mending tools, repairing houses, planning for the planting season that's still weeks away, and teaching. Oswin finally gets his tour of the tunnels. Your father decides he's ready on a rainy afternoon when there's nothing else to do. You ask to come along, partly because you're curious how much your brother has learned, partly because you want to see the chambers again through fresh eyes. Oswin is terrified and trying not to show it. His face goes pale when you descend into the first chamber, even though he's been down here before. But this is different. This isn't hiding from a storm or a raid. This is learning. This is becoming part of something. What's that? He asks, pointing at the carved handprints on the wall. Grandfather's hands, your father says, and his father's before him, and others, going back longer than anyone remembers. Why? Because they wanted to leave something, proof that they were here, that they mattered. Oswin thinks about this. Then, without asking permission, he presses his own small hand against the wall next to the ancient prints. His fingers don't reach as far as the old ones. He's just a child still, his hands soft and unmarked. But someday they won't be. Your father doesn't scold him, just watches, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Now you're part of it, he says, part of the wall, part of the story. The tour continues. Oswin learns the same things you learned months ago, but his reactions are different. Where you were curious, he's nervous. Where you ask questions, he's mostly silent, absorbing everything with wide eyes and a furrowed brow. The narrow passages scare him. You can see it in the way he hesitates before entering each one, the way his breathing gets faster when the walls press close. It's okay to be scared, you tell him, surprising yourself. I was scared too at first. You were? Everyone is. The earth is heavy. It's above you and around you, and there's nowhere to run if something goes wrong. That fear keeps you careful. He nods slowly. Doesn't look convinced, but at least he keeps moving. By the end of the tour, he knows the signal patterns. 3 fast, 3 slow, 2 and 1. He knows where the collection pits are and why they matter. He knows about the false wall in Gerda's chamber, though your father makes him swear not to tell anyone, not ever, not even his best friend. Some secrets save lives, your father says. That one's yours to keep now. Oswin takes the responsibility seriously. You can see it in the set of his small shoulders, the way his jaw tightens. He's 7 years old, and he's been trusted with something important. It's changing him already. That night he crawls into bed next to you and whispers in the dark, "Agnes, do you think I'll be good at it? The underground stuff." You think about the question. He was scared today, genuinely scared. But he didn't run. He didn't cry. He kept putting one foot in front of the other, even when the passages got narrow and the ceiling got low. "Yeah," you say. "I think you'll be good at it." He's quiet for a moment. Then, "Better than you?" You laugh. Can't help it. "Don't push your luck, little brother." He giggles, then rolls over, and within minutes his breathing has gone slow and steady. Asleep. Children do that. They can be terrified one moment and dead to the world the next. You lie awake a while longer, listening to the sounds of the house, your parents talking quietly by the fire, an owl somewhere outside, the creak of settling wood. Tomorrow there will be more work. There's always more work. But tonight, just for a moment, everything feels complete. Summer arrives like a surprise party nobody asked for. 1 week the mornings are still cool, fog rising from the fields, dew on every surface. The next week the sun is blazing and people are complaining about the heat like they didn't spend all winter complaining about the cold. The underground chambers become something different in summer. Instead of shelter from the cold, they're shelter from the heat. That steady 50 degrees that felt almost warm during January now feels blessedly cool during July. People start spending their afternoons underground, escaping the worst of the midday sun. Our grandparents knew this too, your father says, lying on the sleeping platform in the dim coolness while the world above bakes. The earth doesn't just keep you warm in winter, it keeps you cool in summer. Same principle, different direction. You think about that, the same space serving opposite purposes depending on the season. Not warming or cooling exactly, but moderating, keeping things steady while everything above swings between extremes. The food storage becomes more important too. Milk can be kept underground for days without spoiling, when above ground it would turn within hours. Meat stays fresh longer. Even butter holds its shape instead of melting into greasy puddles. Your mother starts keeping an entire section of the storage chamber dedicated to summer provisions. Cheese wrapped in cloth, hanging from the ceiling. Cream in ceramic pots, their lids weighted with stones to keep the flies out. Fresh vegetables from the garden, stored briefly before they're cooked, staying crisp and cool instead of wilting in the heat. It's like having a room that's always November, she says, pleased with herself for the comparison, no matter what month it actually is. The village women have started gathering underground in the afternoons, doing their mending and their spinning in the cool chambers instead of their sweltering houses. It's become almost social. They bring their work and their gossip settling on the carved benches and the packed earth floors, talking about everything and nothing while their fingers stay busy. You join them sometimes. Not for the gossip, which mostly bores you, but for the company. And because your mother expects it. A girl your age should be learning women's work, she says, even if she spends half her time crawling through tunnels like a mole. The women tell stories while they work, about their grandmothers and their great-grandmothers, about harvests and weddings and children born and buried, about the old times when the raiders came more often and the winters were harder and death was never more than a bad day away. You listen and you remember. These stories are important too, even if they're not about walls and drainage channels. They're about survival in a different way. The survival of memory, of community, of knowing who you are and where you came from. Baby Adine is thriving. You see her sometimes when you visit the network. Marta brings her to Gerda's chambers during the hottest afternoons, where the old woman fusses over her like she's the most important thing in the world. Which, to Marta and Henrik, she probably is. She was born in the earth, Gerda says, bouncing Erdine on her knee while the baby gurgles happily. That makes her special. Means the earth will always protect her. You're not sure if that's true. Probably isn't. But it's a nice thing to believe, and Marta clearly takes comfort in it, so you don't argue. The baby has grown so much since that frantic night during the blizzard. Her face has filled out, her hair has come in dark and thick, and she's starting to make sounds that might be words if you listen hard enough. She doesn't seem to remember being born underground, obviously, but the underground will remember her. By August, you've walked the walls so many times you could do it blindfolded. Every chamber in the network is as familiar to you as your own house. You know which walls tend toward dampness and which stay dry. You know which support beams are solid and which need watching. You know where the air flows fastest and where it gets stale if you're not careful. Gerda has started calling you her apprentice, which makes you feel strange. Proud, but strange. You're 12 years old. You shouldn't be anybody's apprentice at anything, but down here, age matters less than knowledge, and you have knowledge now. Hard won, month by month, wall by wall. You'll be the keeper when I'm gone, Gerda says one afternoon, as you're checking a seal she showed you how to apply back in winter. Someone has to be. Someone has to remember what matters. You're not going anywhere. Everyone goes somewhere eventually. That's the point of teaching, making sure it doesn't go with you. You don't like thinking about Gerda being gone. She's become something more than a neighbour over these months. A teacher, a guide. The person who sees things nobody else notices and explains them in ways that actually make sense. But she's old. Really old, and even the earth can't protect against that. The summer storms are different from winter storms. They come fast and loud, thunder cracking across the sky like the world is breaking apart, rain falling so hard it sounds like someone dumping buckets on the roof. But they don't last long. An hour, maybe two, and then they're gone, leaving everything soaked and steaming as the sun comes back out. You don't go underground for summer storms. There's no need. They're not dangerous the way winter storms are, just dramatic. But you check the chambers afterward, every time, making sure the drainage is working, making sure no water has pooled where it shouldn't. It's become automatic, part of who you are now, as natural as breathing. Your father notices. You've got the touch, he says, watching you inspect a wall in the storage chamber. Some people never get it. They dig, they build, but they don't understand. You understand. I just pay attention. That's all understanding is. Paying attention long enough for things to make sense. By September, the harvest is in full swing, and nobody has time for underground work. The chambers wait, patient as always, empty during the day while everyone's in the fields, used for storage as the grain comes in, barrels filling up again after the winter's depletion, the cycle continuing the same way it's continued for generations. You find yourself thinking about those generations a lot these days, the hands on the walls, the chambers that were old before your grandparents were born, the knowledge passed down mouth to ear, parent to child, keeper to keeper. Your handprint isn't on the wall yet. Neither is Oswin's. Not really. The one he pressed against the clay was just impulse, just a child's gesture. Someday you'll do it properly. Someday you'll add your mark to the others, proof that you were here, that you mattered. But not yet. There's still so much to learn, still so many walls to walk, so many secrets to uncover, So many small disasters to prevent before they become big ones. The Earth waits. It's patient. It's been here longer than humans and will be here long after you're gone. But right now, tonight, it's yours. Your shelter. Your safety. Your home within a home. And tomorrow, you'll check the walls again. The first frost comes in late October, painting the fields white and making your breath visible in the morning air. You're 13 now. Your birthday passed quietly a few weeks ago, marked by an extra portion of honey in your porridge and a new pair of leather gloves your mother traded for at the autumn market. 13 feels different from 12 in ways you can't quite explain. Heavier, maybe. More real. It's been almost a year since the raid. Almost a year since you first descended into your family's chambers with your father and learned that there was a whole world beneath your feet. Almost a year since everything changed. The village looks different now. The storehouse was rebuilt over the summer, bigger than before, with stone foundations instead of just wood. The Gruber's house is finished, solid and warm with a proper chimney that doesn't smoke. The burned patches on the fields have grown over, and if you didn't know where to look, you'd never know anything had happened at all. But you do know where to look. That's the difference. This morning you're up before anyone else. It's become a habit over the months, this early rising. You like the quiet of the house before Oswin starts chattering and your mother starts cooking and the day fills up with all its endless demands. These few minutes belong to you alone. You pull on your new gloves and slip outside. The entrance to the chambers is hidden better than ever. Over the summer, your father added a layer of sod on top of the wooden cover, so now it looks like just another patch of ground. Even the stones that mark the spot have been rearranged to look more natural. Someone could walk right past it and never know. You don't go down today. Just check that everything's in place the way you do every morning. Cover secure. No signs of disturbance. No animal tracks suggesting something's been digging nearby. A quick scan, barely 30 seconds, and then you move on. The village is waking up around you. Smoke rising from chimneys, dogs barking, someone's rooster crowing late, like always. The blacksmith's hammer already ringing in the distance. Henrik never seems to sleep. You make your way to Gerda's house. The old woman is up too, sitting on her doorstep with a blanket over her shoulders. She's been doing that more lately, sitting and watching the morning arrive, like she's trying to memorize it. "Cold one," she says as you approach. "First frost. I felt it in my bones before I saw it on the ground." She pulls the blanket tighter. "Come inside. I've got something to show you." Her house smells like herbs and smoke and something else. Something older, harder to name. She's lived here alone for 20 years since her husband died. The place has soaked up her presence like water into clay. She leads you to her work table, where a piece of stretched hide is laid out. On it, drawn in charcoal, is a map. "This is the network," she says. "Every chamber, every passage, every connection." You lean closer. It's not artistic. The lines are shaky, the proportions probably wrong. But you can see the logic of it. Your family's chambers here, connected to Eric's there. The Mullers, the Vogels, the Tanner's place. All of them linked by the narrow Schlupf passages, spread out like a spider's web beneath the village. "I've been working on this since summer," Gerda continues, "getting it right, making sure I didn't forget anything." "Why?" She looks at you with those old eyes that have seen so much. "Because I won't be here forever, and someone needs to know where everything is. Really know, not just from walking it, but from seeing it all at once." You don't argue with her. There's no point. She's old, and she knows it, and pretending otherwise would be an insult to both of you. I want you to have this, she says. When I'm gone, keep it safe, keep it secret. Don't show it to anyone unless they've earned the right. You take the map carefully, rolling it up and tucking it inside your dress. The hide is soft against your skin, warm from being close to the fire. Thank you. Don't thank me. Learn it. Every line, every connection. Burn it into your memory so completely that you could draw it yourself with your eyes closed. I will. She nods, satisfied. Then she does something she's never done before. She reaches out and touches your face, her fingers dry and papery against your cheek. You're a good girl, Agnes. Better than I was at your age. Better than most people are ever. She drops her hand. Now go. I'm tired, and you've got walls to check. You leave her sitting by the fire, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Part of you wants to stay, to ask more questions, to learn everything she knows before it's too late. But another part understands that some knowledge can't be rushed. It comes when it comes, or it doesn't come at all. The morning passes in the usual blur of chores, feeding the chickens, hauling water from the well, helping your mother with the morning bread, keeping Oswin out of trouble, which is a full-time job all by itself. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking about the map, about the lines and connections drawn on that piece of hide, about the responsibility that's been passed to you, quiet and heavy like a stone dropped into still water. After the midday meal, you go underground. Not because anything's wrong, just because you need to. The way some people need to pray or sing or walk in the forest. You need to feel the earth around you, solid and unchanging, while the world above spins through its seasons. The chambers are quiet today. Nobody else is down here. Just you and the silence and the steady temperature that never changes. You start your walk. Your family's main chamber first. The walls are dry, the support beams solid. The carved hands watch you from their places, generations of your family frozen in clay. Someday your handprint will join them. Not yet, but someday. Through the Schlupf to the Müllers. Franz's animal carvings seem to move in the lamplight. The deer leaping, the boar charging. You check the walls here too. A little dampness near the floor, nothing serious. You make a mental note to come back with sealing paste tomorrow, on through the network, the Vogel's high-ceilinged room, the tanner's chemical-scented workshop, Eric's chambers, where Erdine was born during the blizzard. You think about Erdine as you walk, almost a year old now, walking, sort of, on those wobbly legs that babies have. She was born in the earth, and the earth will always be part of her, whether she remembers it or not. Finally you reach Gerda's chambers, the big complex that her husband spent 40 years building, and she spent 20 more maintaining. You walk every inch of it, your fingers trailing along the walls, feeling for the problems she taught you to find. And you do find something. In the deepest room, behind the false wall, there's a crack, not a big one. Hairline thin, running vertically along the corner where the wall meets the ceiling. You almost miss it. Would have missed it 6 months ago. You press your palm against it. Cold. Slightly damp. Not good. This is exactly the kind of thing Gerda warned you about. Small problems that become disasters if nobody catches them. The crack is probably from the spring thaw, moisture getting in and then freezing again over and over, slowly forcing the clay apart. You could fix it yourself. You have the skills now. But this is Gerda's chamber, Gerda's hidden room, and it doesn't feel right to work on it without telling her. So you make your way back above ground, walking carefully through the passages you've memorized over the past year. Up the entrance steps, into the late afternoon light, across the village to Gerda's house. She's asleep in her chair by the fire, breathing slow and steady, her face relaxed in a way it never is when she's awake. You don't want to disturb her, but this is important. Gerda, her eyes open immediately, alert despite the sleep. Old instincts that never go away. Agnes, what is it? I found a crack in your hidden room, the corner near the ceiling. She's quiet for a moment, processing. Then she nods. Show me. You help her up, and together you make the walk to her entrance, down the steps, through the chambers she built with her husband's hands and her own labour. By the time you reach the hidden room, she's breathing hard, leaning on your arm more than she probably wants to admit. You show her the crack. She studies it, runs her fingers along it, presses her palm against it the same way you did. You found this on your own? Yes. Without me telling you where to look? Yes. Another long silence. Then slowly she smiles. A real smile, the kind that reaches her eyes. Good girl, she says. Good keeper. She shows you how to fix it. A special mixture, different from the regular ceiling paste. Clay and lime and something else she keeps in a jar that smells like old eggs. You work together, filling the crack, smoothing it over, making it strong again. This won't last forever, she warns. Nothing does. In 10 years, maybe 20, the whole corner will need to be rebuilt. That's how underground works. Constant maintenance. Constant attention. I understand. Do you? She looks at you hard. Really understand? This isn't just about clay and lime. It's about paying attention to the things that matter, even when nobody's watching. It's about caring for something beyond yourself. For people who aren't born yet, who'll need these chambers 100 years from now. I understand, you say again, and this time you mean it differently. Deeper. She touches your face, again the way she did this morning. Yes, she says quietly. I think you do. By the time you leave Gerda's chambers, the sun is setting. The sky is orange and pink and purple, colours splashed across the clouds like someone spilled paint across a canvas. Beautiful, the way autumn sunsets always are in this part of the world. You stand at the entrance for a moment, half in and half out of the earth. Behind you, the tunnels stretch away into darkness. Ahead of you, the village is settling down for the evening, smoke rising, children being called inside, dogs finding their spots by warm hearths. Both worlds, above and below, surface and shelter. You used to think of them as separate. The house where you lived, the chambers where you hid. 2 different places, 2 different lives. But that's not right, you realise now. They're the same thing. Different parts of the same whole, like breathing in and breathing out, like summer and winter, like living and dying. The earth is always there beneath your feet, waiting, patient, ready when you need it. You close the entrance carefully, replacing the sod cover, checking that everything looks natural. Then you walk home through the gathering dusk, your new gloves warm on your hands, the rolled-up map still tucked against your skin. Your mother has supper ready. Pottage again, thick with vegetables from the autumn harvest. A small piece of cheese that she's been saving. Fresh bread still warm from the afternoon baking. Your family gathers around the fire. Your father tired from a day of working on the winter preparations. Your mother always busy, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Oswin, already half asleep, his head nodding toward his chest. Nobody talks much, there's no need. The fire crackles, the wind sighs outside, and somewhere in the distance an owl calls out to the darkness. This is what survival looks like, not the dramatic moments, not the raids and the blizzards and the babies born underground. Those are just the peaks, the parts that stick in memory. The rest of it is this: quiet evenings, shared meals, family gathered close against the coming cold. Your father catches your eye across the fire. Check the chambers today? Yes. Everything good? You think about the crack in Gerda's hidden room, about the fix you applied, the lesson you learned. Everything's good, he nods, satisfied. He trusts you now in a way he didn't a year ago. You've earned it. Wall by wall, passage by passage, you've become someone he can rely on. After supper, you help your mother clean up while your father carries Oswin to bed. The boy barely stirs, deep in whatever dreams 7-year-olds have. Probably dragons. He's been obsessed with dragons since your father's stories during the blizzard. Your mother touches your shoulder as you're putting away the bowls. You were gone a long time today. I was with Gerda, learning things. She's teaching you well. She's teaching me everything she knows, because she won't be here forever. Your mother is quiet for a moment. Then, none of us are here forever. That's why we teach, so something survives. You think about that as you settle into your own bed later, the straw rustling beneath you, the blankets heavy and warm. Your mother's voice is still soft in the background, talking quietly with your father about tomorrow's work, next week's plans, the endless details of keeping a family alive through another winter. Outside, the first frost has settled over everything, turning the world silver in the moonlight. The cold is coming. The long nights, the short days, the same cycle that's repeated since before your grandparents' grandparents were born. But beneath you, under the floor, under the foundation, under the earth itself, the chambers wait. Steady, warm, ready. You close your eyes. The map is memorized now, burned into your mind the way Gerda asked. Every line, every connection, every chamber and passage and hidden room. You can see it behind your eyelids, a web of safety spread out beneath the village like roots beneath a tree. Your family is safe. Your village is prepared. The earth is patient and you are its keeper. Outside, the owl calls again. Closer this time, maybe on your roof. A night hunter beginning its work. But you're not a hunter tonight. You're not a worker or a digger or a keeper. You're just a girl in a warm bed, surrounded by family, drifting towards sleep on this first frosty night of the season. Your breathing slows, your thoughts soften. The sounds of the house fade to a gentle murmur, no different from the wind, no different from the earth itself settling beneath you. The underground is there. It will always be there. Tomorrow you'll check the walls again, fix what needs fixing, learn what needs learning. But right now, there's only this: the warmth of the blankets, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, the sweet heaviness of a day well spent, pulling you gently down into the darkness. Not the darkness of the tunnels, something softer, something kinder. Sleep. It comes for you the way spring comes after winter, slow and sure and impossible to stop. Your muscles relax, your mind quiets. The last thought you have is of hands pressed into clay, generations of your family, all the keepers who came before you. And then nothing. Just rest. Just peace. Just the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who has found their place in the world, above the ground and below it, part of something older and larger than any single life. The earth holds you, and you are home.